Hi there, and welcome to My Great Grandpa and Me. I'm your host, Jordan Metcalf. Have you ever wondered where you came from? I mean your ancestors. Well, I did. So I decided to do a little digging to find out more about my family heritage. I found out my grandpa Metcalf in Texas had traced back our family tree all the way back to 1766, which goes back to my sixth grade. But I decided it would be hard to go back that far for an interview, so I thought I would ask my grandpa in Texas about his dad, Robert L. Metcalf Sr. You see, he is right at the bottom of the first family tree. So here are my most recent ancestors, starting with my great-great-grandpa John Arthur Metcalf. I have his gold pocket watch hiding in a sock at home. Then, the star of our show, great-grandpa Robert L. Metcalf Sr. Then, my grandpa in Texas, Robert L. Metcalf Jr., then my own dad, William Metcalf, and then, of course, me, the guy you see and love at school. Here you see everyone in the family tree that we will talk about. You are going to hear from Grandpa in a minute, but here are some things to listen for that I found really interesting about my great-grandpa's life. That my great-grandfather lived during the Depression. 2. That he didn't have very much electricity and used a projector for comic strips, not the newspaper. 3. He was an engineer and had a slide rule that we still have today. Ready, set, listen.
Hey Grandpa, I'm doing a research project on the heritage of our family, and I decided to do a report on your dad, my great-grandpa.
Hey, do you know I'm 87?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
That's a whole bunch of years, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I never thought I'd live this long.
So, the first question is, what was it like when he was a kid in, elementary school?
Well, Jordan, first of all, we have to know that he was born 113 years ago. And back then, he didn't have a computer, and he didn't keep a family tree kind of a thing like I did. As a matter of fact, I know very little about him as a young man. I do know that his dad was a merchant prince, if you will, in Columbus, Ohio. He ran one of the biggest clothing stores in Columbus. And so the family was not poor. As a matter of fact, I think they were probably on the rich side because they sent my father away to University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan for his engineering degree. And that tells me that they must have had money. Otherwise, he would have gone to Ohio State, which the campus is just walking distance from his home.
What was it like to grow up then? Like, when he became a teenager?
Well, first of all, Jordan, you have just oodles of things that they did not have back then. Back then, one of my father's amusements was to look at glass slides of pictures of comics. He didn't have comic strips in the paper. They had these comic strips on a glass slide, and the slide would fit into a lantern that would project the one slide onto the wall, and the light source was a coal oil wick, a lamp, if you will. They also had what they called a stereographic picture. You had two photographs. One was slightly different than the other, and when you held them up and looked at them through this device, it made it look like you were only seeing one picture, and it gave it some depth rather than a flat picture. They did not have a radio. They did have what was known as a gramophone. I think a gramophone. I think I think that's the right word. And then later they had what was known as a Victrola. Victrola played records. The records, I don't know whether you've ever seen a record like it. They were about 12 inches in diameter, black plastic with grooves in them.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
The Victrola, you had to wind it up. There was no electric power on it. And the Victrola was introduced in 1906.
Yeah, not much like a CD player now.
Sir?
Not much like a CD player now.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, by the way, my grandpa sent me an email with this cool information about the era when my great-grandpa was just about my age, 12 years old. I thought you would like to know some facts about this time. The year is 1904. Only 14% of the homes in the U.S. had a bathtub, so buy your deodorant and use it. Only 8% of the homes in the U.S. had a telephone. A 3-minute call from Denver to New York City costs $11, so save up your allowance. There were only 8,000 cars in the U.S. and only 144 miles of paved roads. That's about from Illinois to Madison, Wisconsin. The maximum speed limit in most cities was 10 miles per hour. I can ride my bike that fast. The average wage in the U.S. was 22 cents an hour. You can't even buy a gumball with that. The average U.S. worker made between $200 and $400 per year. 90% of all U.S. physicians had no college education. That would be scary. 2 out of every 10 U.S. adults could not read or write. No bedtime stories? Only 6% of all Americans had graduated high school. 18% of households in the U.S. had at least one full-time servant. Now back to my interview with Grandpa.
What did he do for a living? Like, I know that he was like an engineer, but, was he like really good at it or anything?
Well, he was an engineer until the Depression hit. And when the Depression hit, engineers all over the country were laid off, and you'd find men who weeks before were active businessmen were on the street selling apples, doing anything at all to make some money. Well, my dad had an idea that he could sell trisodium phosphate, a cleanser, to women, and all he had to do, he'd buy a big barrel of it. I don't know, barrel weighed 150 pounds? I don't know. It weighed a heck of a lot. Anyhow, he'd package it up in 1 and 3 pound packages and went door to door selling it. And then he found some reluctance on the wives to buy the powder. So he said, hey, wait a minute, I can mix that up. And he took a gallon jug and a couple spoonsful of cleanser, added some blue coloring, and sold that couple spoonsful for what he was selling a whole pound of the chemical for.
Did you help at all, or was it just him?
My job was to weigh the chemical into 1 and 3 pound boxes and seal the boxes. Yeah, that was my job. I was, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old.
Did you get paid for that, or?
Jordan, I was permitted to eat at the table with the rest of them. That was my contribution to the family. No, I did not get paid.
So he's an engineer, he did the soap, and then what else did he do?
Well, then he went back to law school to get his law degree and passed the state bar exam and became a lawyer.
Was he a good dad?
Excellent. Yes. I owe everything I am to the upbringing I had from my father. Yes. excellent dad.
Did he tell you he loved you a lot?
Never did. I don't know. It was something he couldn't do. Never did. But he didn't have to.
Can you tell us the fish story? Because my dad was talking to me about a fish story.
Oh, fish story. Well, my father built a camper very similar to the campers you see today, a tent on wheels. But he was 30 years ahead of himself. Anyhow, we're up camping on the shores of Lake Erie. And this is back in a time when Lake Erie was not polluted. And there were many, many fishermen selling their wares. They had a wonderful whitefish that they would sell. And my dad took us walking one morning. My mom, of course, was still in bed in the camper. That was one of her privileges for going with us. She got to sleep late. Anyhow, Dad bought some fish and brought them back, and we had them for breakfast. And the kids were just pleased as all get out. When my mother got up and smelled the fish, she'd like to have a fit that her darlings were fed fish for breakfast. That's a terrible thing. Anyhow, we're going down the road, and my mom starts in again about fish for breakfast. And she says she kept smelling fish. Well, about that time, I'm sitting in the back seat of the car, and I pulled some fish out of my pocket that I had wrapped in wax paper. If you think she was mad before, you should have heard her then.
Did you take a lot of vacations?
Every year we went camping someplace, yes. Back then, it didn't cost but maybe 50 cents to park a tent or a trailer or whatever you had.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Today you'd spend $20, I guess.
Yeah. Were there a lot of different places where you went? Or was it usually just one place?
Well, we went all over. We took a lot of vacations in the state of Ohio, but we traveled all over the world. Not all over the world, all over the United States.
Do you know how the watch got dented?
Do I know what?
How that gold watch got dented?
Oh, yeah. I wore it in my watch pocket. Now, you don't have watch pockets in trousers today, but back when I was a young man, every reasonable pair of trousers had a watch pocket. And it was a small pocket, about a 2-inch square, that opened at your belt line and was right above your right hand pants pocket, okay? Anyhow, I had that's where I carried the watch. And I was a field artilleryman at Ohio State University as an ROTC cadet. And it was a horse-drawn outfit, if you can imagine. And anyhow, as a junior and senior, we were permitted to ride those horses wherever we wanted. One day I was riding this one old nag, and I was taking it across a jump, and the daggone horse got up to the jump and then shied away from it, and I went flying over its head and landed on my you-know-what. Anyhow, I got a dent in the case of the watch. Yeah.
Did my great-grandpa use that slide rule? We have his slide rule.
Oh, the slide rule you have belonged to my father when he was an engineer.
Do you know what they used it for?
Do I know what?
What they used it for?
To calculate. You didn't have calculators. You had a slide rule. And a good man, a fellow that was practiced with a slide rule, could divide things out to, 6 decimal places like zip. Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty much it. Thanks for helping me with this.
Well, I hope you get a good grade.
You wouldn't want to disappoint my grandpa, would you, Miss Winterberg? Anyway, there you have it. my great-grandpa and me and all those other people who love and care for me. Jordan Metcalf signing off. Hey, I finished my report. You can't still be here. Oh, fine. I'll tell you how I did it. This project included all of the following: selecting pictures, scanning pictures, cropping and retouching pictures using Photoshop elements, recording phone interview with Grandpa on computer, editing interview using SoundForge, writing copy in Microsoft Word, recording copy on computer, creating a PowerPoint presentation, inserting photos and clip art into the presentation, and producing the movie in Flash using Camtasia Studios. The end. Oh no! I'm still recording! Stop it! I found out my grandpa in 3, 2, 1. I found out my grandpa. Three. I'm trying.